Welcome to the Groovy Bean Night Friday Friends. Every Friday at 6 p.m, join us with your host Yvonne Palermo. We are all little beans here to seed the planet. Get groovy with Yvonne. Wolf Spirit Radio Fridays and second Sundays. Grab your bean. Listening to Wolf Spirit Radio.
Salutations and good evening, Haggy Shack Radio and Wolf Spirit Radio listeners. You have just arrived in Groovy Bean territory, the place where seeds grow. We spark change, all us beans here to feed the planet. I'm your host, Yvonne Palermo, and thank you for tuning in tonight and joining me on the Groovy Bean journey. It's time to snuggle up with a fuzzy wuzzy blanket, pour some lavender tea goodness, and keep an ear out for Bigfoot hollers as we dive into another 2-hour show coming to you from the Cascadia Mountains. So tell your friends, pass on the word, and let's get our awakened family pack growing. Groovy Bean is every Friday night at 6 p.m. and second Sundays for your grooviest of alternative services. Shout out special thanks to JP for his translation of me into music. Tonight's special Saturday show is produced by Haggy Shack Radio, lovely Miss Colleen, and simulcasted to Wolf Spirit Radio. www.haggyshack.com. Holy social media pants do a dance. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, give it a like, Instagram, and YouTube at Groovy Bean. That is spelled GROOVIEBEAN. My website is groovybean.wix.com/Yvonne Palermo. There you can find the upcoming list of shows as well. Tonight's show, folks, is pre-recorded. Any questions during this show, please email myself or our guest, Justin Deschamps. Thank you very, very much. Now, last but not least, friends, we are a donation station. The sheep don't sleep here in the pack. So if you like what you hear and want more of it, show the Babylonian lovey-doveys. Would you please click that donate link and follow through? Both stations have a donate button, and thank you for all the support. Now, tonight, Saturday night, we are bringing back Justin Deschamps from Stillness in the Storms news blog. Part 1 can be found on the Groovy Bean channel on YouTube, and there's probably links on Justin's blog as well. His blog can be found at sitsshow.blogspot.com. That's SITSSHOW. Or stillnessinthestorm.com. Also on Facebook, it's facebook.com/sitsshow. Ooh, all right, let's bring Justin Deschamps back in. Justin, thanks for coming back for part 2.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Yvonne.
Oh, you're very welcome. So let's see here. Part 1, we left off. We for listeners just tuning in, we did do some pre-questionnaire questions. That's correct, yes. And so we took a bunch of questions, and Justin was kind enough to start answering those questions, and what an amazing response. Everyone is very thankful. So again, thank you for taking the time to do this part 2. We left off discussing about discernments, and I'm going to go ahead and re-ask that question so we can recap on anything there and keep it going. We have a question here about discernment and when a person is reaching out to a higher conscience or even an ascended master. How do you tell if the message is from a true source reaching back with an answer? Sometimes I feel like this higher self might be a negative source. My discernment says, nope, this is incorrect. Move along. It's just a question. So how would you like to answer that, Justin?
Sure, that's a great question. We touched on a little bit last time how whether or not the person that you're actually making contact with or the intelligence you're making contact with is going to give you empowering information or information that basically wants them to create a dependency. So, and I've studied channeled information almost right away when I woke up back in 2010, but in particular, there was a book I recently read that was so phenomenal in its way of articulating these ideas and how complete it is with not just channeling, but almost everything under the sun. Mm-hmm. It's called Children of the Law of One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis. And I just want to reference that because that is an excellent resource for learning more about channeling and ascended masters, but also a great deal of other things. And one of the things it mentions in there, which I strongly agree with, is that the information you're going to receive from a discarnate entity like an ascended master, an angel, a spirit, even your higher self, you really need to use your personal and inner discernment, because the quality of the information in the channel really depends on your ability to create a thought form or invoke a type of consciousness that allows you to have a clear contact. So as a good example of this, another channeling by the similar name, which is the raw material, the Law of One, that was channeled using three people used very precise techniques that they had been developing for decades before they even attempted to do the Law of One channeling. Mm-hmm. And if anybody who's read those channelings can remember that there was a very precise process that they had to go through. They had to do a meditation. There was a particular orientation that the channeler had to lay down in relation to north and south. They had these items that she found that were particularly meaningful for her that needed to be placed in these very precise angles. Mm-hmm. And then the reason why is because there was a negative entity that was trying to come in and muck about with the channeling. Uh-huh. And even in later works, Carla Ruckert had mentioned that she believed that in some instances, some of the information she had been receiving was not as perfect as it could have been because of this interference. Mm. So my point is that even if you've got a really good level of skill, your ability to receive 100% absolute truth from the source is going to be really low. Okay. Mm-hmm. And in a grander scheme of things, like if we consider what is the point of that we're even here? Why are we even in this life in the first place? Well, I would argue that one of the primary reasons that we're here is for you as an individual to grow into yourself, become a master of your own consciousness, and become your own sovereign, which basically means you have to develop your own discernment. Mm-hmm. And any higher intelligence is not going to want to lead you along just to give you all the answers. Right. Because in the process of just giving you all the answers, it's kind of like, you're trying to help a young child with their math homework. Well, if you just tell them what all the answers are they going to learn anything? No. Of course not, right? Right. It shouldn't be easy. Exactly. It shouldn't be, oh, here you go, boop. Right? Right. So just as a general rule of thumb, the answers that you receive, on the one hand, if it's from a very good quality source, let's say you do actually make contact with an ascended master or some other intelligence that's very benevolent. Mm-hmm. Well, the quality of information they're going to give you, or the type of information, is going to be in a way that encourages you to develop your own discernment. Mm-hmm. So if you ask a question like, well, should I go to school next year, graduate school next year, or should I pursue a career in painting? If the answer you get is you should go to graduate school, you should probably be wary of that answer, because a truly benevolent entity is not going to want to sidestep your free will choice by telling you what to do. Aha. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's one perspective on it. Mm-hmm. That being said, though, all information, whether it's from a negative entity or not, is always perfectly tailored for you and your personal growth at any given time. Mm. So this is a kind of a different perspective on it, but there's this idea of negative greeting, which is discussed loosely in the Law of One. Mm-hmm. And Corey, Good, and David have been talking about it a little bit as well, which is this idea that you can basically invite psychic attacks from other entities based on what you're doing karmically.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is another thing to be wary of when you're doing channeled information. And this is something I thought was really profound in the Children of the Law of One book, is it says that you could use a channel, or you could use a pendant. I don't know if anybody's ever done this before, but you hold a pendant and you ask it questions, and it can sometimes give you answers.
Could they use dowsing rods too?
Yep, dowsing rods, tea leaves. I mean, there's many ways to use divination and get answers. And in your initial steps in the process of evolving as a soul, the universe is going to give you more leeway, basically. So because you're not as aware, it'll let you have contact with these intelligences that can give you information. So let's say you start using a pendant and you're really new to the whole spiritual path and progress, so you start getting all these intuitive answers, and they're really helpful for you. Mm-hmm. And then over time, you start growing more and more, and you're getting more intelligent and able to discern things properly instead of having to rely on external sources. And eventually, the information quality starts to get less and less accurate with the pendant. Mm-hmm. And this can happen to a lot of people. It happened with me when I was using the pendant for years, and I just recently stopped relying on it as much because I was getting such mixed answers.
Interesting.
And one of the things it says in the Children of the Law of One is that eventually the universe is going to pull back, and it's going to kind of put you in a position where you're going to have to rely on your own discernment and your own intuitive processes to make choices. So that even if you're having really amazing success with a pendant or a pendulum, eventually it's going to start to give you weird answers. And you're going to have this experience of not being able to have blind faith in what you're receiving. Mm-hmm. So in that process of doing that, you're going to get some hokey answers. And on one hand, some people may say, well, if you get inaccurate answers, then this just disproves the whole thing, and it kind of suggests that the universe is a really dark place. Well, I would say that that's not the case. Mm-hmm. I would say that it's actually an amazing blessing or a gift that the universe does this for us, because just like a child, you want to help it and encourage it to grow, but eventually you've got to step back and you've got to let that child, fly out of the nest on its own. Right. And that's basically this whole topic of contacting external things, okay, is all going to be wrapped up in this. So in the big picture, whether we're talking about a channeled intelligence, an ascended master, pendulums, going to your favorite guru, your psychic, whatever it is that you turn to outside of yourself to get answers, that's part of your process, but you always need to be reintegrating or encouraging your own internal discernment, because eventually the universe is going to prevent you from getting those answers. Right. And you're going to have to start making those decisions on your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. For me, I was thinking about that. There's so many, because there's so many different types of, people that, the channeling you have, and then people that, there's people that are, I would say, victims of MK Ultra, right? I feel like I've seen this where somebody was saying that they were channeling something, but then at the same time I found, it was just red flags for me. But I don't think that this person was even aware of what how they're perceived. Does that make sense? So I think that's part of the discernments too, because, these channelings, it can be dangerous. Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's the thing is, the bigger issue, the underlying thread behind whether we're talking about channeled information or the mainstream media or listening to your pastor at church or, listening to your president. It's anytime you blindly accept something as truth without actually knowing why yourself,
Yes.
you're putting yourself at risk.
Yes. And I that is, oh my gosh, that is so key, what you just said. And you said it so eloquently. And folks that are listening, remember that. There's a lot of, charlatans. There's a lot of, but there's also a lot of very, very dangerous, messages and folks being used to deliver the message.
Right.
So,
and I mean, I don't want to leave it at a kind of dark and dreary note, because the good news, the silver lining with that is that when you start to focus on the message and not the messenger, it becomes much easier to discern things. And we've been trained as a species to focus on the messenger.
Right.
Okay. So if a message comes from, the president or our doctor or whomever that we find we have reverence for, it's almost like a part of our mind shuts off and we just absorb the information as if it's absolute truth. But what you can do is just simply listen to the message. Listen to the message and then analyze the message on its own. What I call this as, I say this as a technique of discerning an idea on its merits alone. So if let's pick somebody who's a lot of people have a lot of prestige for, let's say like Gandhi.
Okay.
He said something like, well, we just have to pay our taxes and that's the spiritual thing that everybody needs to do, is they have to pay their taxes. Right? Well, because it's Gandhi, and if you lack internal discernment, it's going to be really easy for you to say, well, if Gandhi said it, it must be true.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
But, so instead of focusing on the messenger, just focus on the message. So literally try to ignore the messenger. Just imagine it if somebody randomly on the street walked up to you and said, the spiritual thing to do is to pay your taxes. Most of the people listening to the show would probably be like, yeah, okay, whatever, you're crazy.
Right.
Right? But if a reincarnation of Buddha showed up, or if a booming voice from the sky came and told us to pay our taxes, just the fact that it came from that source is going to make us think, well, wait a minute, maybe we should listen to this. So the thing that I really wanted to underscore is when we're talking about discernment, like we talked about in the last part, it's about absorbing all information and placing it in the proper place where it needs to go. Okay, so that means listen to everything, but don't blindly believe anyone, basically.
Yep.
And once you've received that information, now you can discern it properly. So the point I'm getting at is don't box yourself into a corner where, because you don't know whether or not something's true, you just totally ignore it. Because there's two ways to be fooled. You either believe what isn't true, or you believe what is, or you do not believe what is true. I think I said that wrong, but the point I'm getting at is that if you deny something, if you deny the existence of something,
right,
okay, without actually knowing why, it's just as bad as if you believed it without knowing why.
Absolutely. Sit with it.
Yeah.
Sit with it, right? Definitely. I recently been having some experiences with, kind of curious, Justin, how you feel about energy vampires. Do you, I've been noticing a difference, between, how would I explain? Well, I'll just ask you, how do you handle recognizing energy vampires?
Well, that term is used a lot, and I think everybody's kind of got their own definition of it.
Right.
But, I would say an energy vampire is somebody that, like, either you're interacting with them and then you walk away and you literally physically feel drained.
Yes.
Okay. Or it's somebody that is so good at distracting you from your own life that now your time is drained away, which is another form of energy. So, if you're really, it comes down to, do you value your own process and evolution? So, and to speak to the time issue, time is, even though time is an illusion, quote unquote, and I don't want to get into that really kind of big concept, but for the moment, let's just assume that time is something valuable. What you spend your time on is what you develop and enhance and grow within yourself. So if you never pour the waters of time into yourself, then the seed that you are can't blossom into everything that you could be.
Aw, because Justin Deschamps is a groovy bean. He's sweet, and I love him. Yeah, no, exactly.
So like the energy vampire, I think I would classify those way more time vampires I would also say are energy vampires, because there's people in our lives, usually our closest associates, that they want us to spend their time with them. You know, I have a lot of friends and family that I woke up and now I'm not into the same things that I was when I was with them. And there's this kind of tension between, well, you know, I don't want to disconnect myself from these people, but I also at the same time don't want to spend all my time and energy talking about, you know, I literally used to do nothing besides talk about movies and TV shows all day long.
Yep.
You know, and that's fun, don't get me wrong, but if you literally spend all of your free time doing just that, then you don't have time to spend on the things that are important for you and your soul growth.
Right. And the people that aren't awake or they're not going to be talking about anything to also assist you and enrich you. So, right. So there's that.
But, yeah, it's like you know, everybody has that thing that they're passionate about. So it's kind of like the awakening experience is like being in a room surrounded by doors. And you choose to open some of the doors, but on some of the doors you choose to keep closed. And you can't go through all the doors at once, so you have to choose which ones to walk through. And that analogy I'm referring to is time. So you can only spend your time on learning about one thing at once.
Right.
And if your passion and your soul growth is moving towards, let's say energy work for some people, then if you're not spending time on that, then then you won't be evolving in that capacity. So it will kind of hold you back.
Sure. And it's also navigating learning how to say no.
Yes.
Absolutely. Right? You
know, and there's one thing I've learned is that you can graciously accept an invitation, which I've become professional at. You know, I would love to sit down and watch the football game with you, but I have this project I've been really wanting to do, and I think that I would rather spend my time doing that. But if you ever want to sit down and have a conversation about XYZ, then I would love to do that.
Oh, fantastic.
You know?
Fan-freaking-tastic example. Yes.
Yeah. In law, they call that conditional acceptance.
Conditional acceptance.
But we can get into that in a minute, or later. So the second part of the question is like energy vampire, so somebody you literally physically feel like you're being drained. And this is a reality. It's actually true that, you release biophotons. So your body physically releases, light, bioluminescent light, that your cells use to communicate with each other. And people who, are angry or upset or have internal angst can literally drain another person's biological energy away from their body. So there is a valid scientific basis to the idea of an energy vampire. Now, the interesting thing is your ability to create your own internal energy or chi or prana it comes from your food. So you can get this energy from food, but you can also get this energy just by meditating or just breathing. As a matter of fact, when you breathe, you pull in some of this vital energy. And when you consciously start to think of yourself as doing that, like literally imagine yourself like a plant. I've been doing this lately. I imagine myself with my eyes closed. And when I breathe in, it's like I'm literally sucking in the energy into my whole body, and I feel it right in my solar plexus. There's this like little tingling that comes. And then I breathe out. It's like I can feel this wave of energy coming and vitalizing me. Well, that's that prana. So when you're a sovereign within yourself, when you're balanced in mind, emotions and spirit, or mind, body, spirit, your ability to create this life force energy is like exponential. You can create so much of it that even if you had 10 energy vampires around you, they could suck it as much as they could, and you just keep pouring it out. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in that sense, I would say that the best defense against being energy vampires is to grow this nourishing ability within yourself through meditation, proper diet, helping to gain mastery over yourself. Basically, anything that causes you to lose equilibrium is going to get your ability to create this life force energy is going to be hindered, which means you're more susceptible to being drained by other people. So, as a really good example, when you're sitting down in front of the TV or you're at your desk at work and you're not really into what you're doing and you'd rather be somewhere else, that's usually when we reach for food or munchies to kind of give us the pep we need to move on. Right? Mm-hmm. This happens to me all the time. I'm sitting I'm watching a movie, which I don't do too much these days anymore, but, I start to like dissociate from my mind, and before I know it, I'm thinking about munching on something.
Right.
Now compare that to when you're really inspired. When you're like really feeling this deep moment of inspiration because you're either working on something artistic or you're reading a really good book that you love, or you're having just a very inspired experience.
Right.
If you're really inspired, you're not going to be thinking about food or anything. You're going to be filled with so much energy that it's like, it's like
passion.
you can barely sit still. Exactly. So yeah.
So with passion, the cookie is not staring back at you with a set of eyes. Right? Yeah. I get that.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay. Awesome. All right. We're diving in. Ready for another question?
All right.
All right. Here we go. Justin Deschamps, what do you do to turn off your brain? What are some of your favorite pastimes when you aren't hammering out articles? How many words a minute can you type? And this certain person said they wanted me to say a little shout out to you and a big thanks from Stillness in the Storms, and that is Derek Faust. He wanted me to say his name for you because it was okay. So you want to say hello? Yes.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to not only just all the lovely people in the SITS group, which I adore. I can't tell you how. I don't get a chance to interact in there too much, but when I do, I'm just so happy to see all the things that happen in there, the good and bad. Yep. I think it's a really beautiful, like, real place that we who call ourselves awake and we say we want to be the change in the world, where we actually get to test that out in real time in the SITS group, which is just so awesome.
Yep, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and definitely a big shot to all the admins for that group. I know being an admin is not an easy job. I mean, I can't tell you how difficult it is to balance between, wanting to help one person and then trying to keep the group in a big perspective for everybody. So I commend anybody who volunteers for that position. I thank you guys and gals for all the great help you provided.
Absolutely. And the new researchers too.
Yeah, and the new researchers. Yeah, I've actually, I haven't had much time to go in there either, but there's some stuff that I'm planning on rolling out soon that will hopefully make that even better. Right. But anyway.
Okay.
So, what do I do to turn my brain off? Mm-hmm. Oh boy.
Where's the button, Justin?
Well, I don't really turn my brain off. Not in a normal sense. Like, I don't really veg out too much. I try not to veg out. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to be turning my brain off, it'll be more in a kind of a productive way, or at least I'm moving in this direction. So if I want to relax, I'll try to do meditation. Mm-hmm. Meditation is huge for me. It's, as a matter of fact, when I notice myself getting anxious because, I'm trying to write this article and get it out in the time frame I allotted myself, and it's just not happening, and I start to get really anxious because the timing is not working out for me, I just take a step back, do a few deep breaths, and clear my mind, and realize, it's okay if I don't make my time deadline. It's important to just focus on what I'm doing right now. Mm-hmm. So that meditation is really big for me. I also, I also play guitar, which helps me a lot.
Ooh, okay.
Really good way for me to relax. That's kind of, before I even got into meditation, that was kind of my meditation.
Do you sing too?
I can sing a little, but singing and playing is still a challenge.
Is that like rubbing your tummy and patting your head at the same time?
It is. Okay. I could do that, no problem.
Right
but,
on.
Yeah, singing and playing is still kind of tough for me. So yeah, I do that, and then I also just right now one of my things that I do a lot during the day is I'm like reading articles, I'm searching for stuff, I'm answering emails, dealing with things on social media. I mean, there's so much active outpouring that to just have 10 minutes to just sit quietly and think about something in my own mind space is very relaxing for me. I don't get to do it as often as I would like these days. And I can really go really far out in my own head space. So that is really nice for me to relax, and I do that as well to relax.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, it is.
Because we all know what the society would say to probably most of us that have those busy brains. Hey, have a prescription of this little medication here because you think too much.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, I had
much.
ADHD when I was a kid.
Go.
That's what they told me, so.
Bing, bing. Yep.
Yeah. And then, you know, obviously the other thing I like to do is just sit around and have great, awesome conversations with cool people like you, so.
Aw, gee, thank you kindly for that. No, it's my pleasure. Thank you as well. Yes, I would have to say the same. I don't, riddle me this. What is this turning off your brain? I have no clue. Yep.
Right.
So, but I do go back to what you said, and I think that's important for folks out there. Meditation can be a few breaths. Just the process of intaking that air is in itself a meditation process, right?
Yeah. I mean,
those little moments.
Russell Walter had a really great definition of meditation that what he said is meditation is the state of mind wherein you begin to commune with the divine or God, basically. Which it kind of sounds like this obscure Christian perspective, but if we think about the fact that the Creator is everything, there's literally nothing but the Creator out there. Then at all moments, you're always receiving insight and information from the Creator. But if you're so busy with all these thoughts buzzing around in your head, you can never have the time to pay attention. So just getting still in mind doesn't mean literally you're trying to wipe your mind clean. It just literally means you're trying to expand your awareness beyond the mind chatter you have so that you can actually receive all of this amazing stuff that's happening all around you.
Absolutely. I wonder, because you have the creative mind. I know I do. I know many folks do. You know, artists, creativity. I'm thinking, for someone that isn't creative, I wonder how their outlet would be to just kind of be more in tuned.
Well, I mean, my opinion on that, I guess, is that there are no uncreative people.
Woo! Whoop, whoop.
I mean, your mind is a perfect example. Your mind can literally do nothing but create.
Yep.
It can't destroy things. It can only create. So, you know, have you ever tried to get an image that you've seen out of your head?
Yes.
Can it be done? Have you ever been able to do it?
Yes. Well, I mean, I draw, so but I'm translating what I see, so.
Oh, well, yeah, what I meant was out of your head. I mean, not that you take an image and do something creative with it. What I meant by that is, can you see an object or see something and then wipe your mind completely of it so that you have absolutely no recollection at all?
You know, sorry, my dog's saying hello. Sorry about that.
Hello, dog.
Hello. My goodness. I have to, you know what? That is a very intriguing question. The reason why is coming from traumatic brain injury. I can say yes to that because I can remember back to, at the points where the frustration levels of seeing something, and then you look away, and then they give you the test of what it is that you have to either line things up or say what you saw, and the frustration of not being able to reiterate that.
Right.
Is that the same thing? I hope.
Well, yeah, I mean,
okay.
I'm kind of what I was getting at is that it's difficult to get into the whole mind creates thing, is that even though you may not have conscious recall, your subconscious records everything.
Right.
So even though the conscious mind can't recognize what you just saw, your unconscious does.
I got it now.
You know what I mean? And
that's when you say, Yvonne, just get out that crowbar and start cracking. Right? Yeah.
Right. So so the point I was getting is that if you think you're not a creative person, what I would say is that you may have told yourself that, well, because you can't draw or you can't paint or these things that we label as creative pursuits may have put yourself in a position like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, because I can't draw or sing or do this, and I'm not creative, and I'm not going to try to do anything. You know, but when you come up with a meaning, like if you read a paragraph or you look at a painting, everybody's going to have their own interpretation of what they're looking at.
Absolutely.
And that is a creative act right there.
I love this. Absolutely right.
Right? So in that way, you just observing your experience, you just living life is a ceaseless, nonstop, inescapable act of creation. You know? And kind of what we've been trained to do is to take all the wonder and excitement that is just unfolding around us all at all times and make it seem like it's just part of everyday life. And boring and, so anyway.
And no, I find this fascinating because I'm just realizing right now that it was the structured system teaching me through this TBI, right brain versus left brain. There you go.
I can only imagine the stuff that they,
Oh, it was a freaking nightmare. It really was. And, but it just, thank you. You just totally helped me out. So I appreciate that. Yeah. Nope. That was complete structure right there. All right. I want to remind listeners, you are tuned in. It is special Saturday night tonight on HaggieShackRadio.com, simulcast through WolfSpiritRadio.com. This is Yvonne Palermo. I am joined with the wonderful Justin Deschamps from Stillness in the Storm. So happy to have you back for part 2. Going to dive right into the next question. Hi, Justin. I would like to know about the Satanic Symbolism seminar you attended at the Ethical Society in Philadelphia a couple months ago.
Ooh, that was a great seminar. Okay, well, it was a presentation by Jay Parker, who is a former member, well, he still is family with, but he was raised by a generational satanic family that claimed to be rank and file members of the Illuminati. And Mark Passio, who was a Satanist priest in the Church of Satan. And basically, I had heard both their works before. I'd been studying their material for some time, so it wasn't, huge new information for me. But what it described was that Jay spoke a little bit some of his personal experiences of being raised in that situation, which, if anybody's read about satanic ritual abuse, it's very intense, stuff. And he also had a presentation about, I'm trying to remember it as we talk about it here. He presented information about basically the New World Order, how they're using, vaccines and poison food to cull the population or promote depopulation. And then Mark Passio, he discussed what the true ideology of Satanism is versus the fake one that everybody probably recognizes, where people think that it's just a bunch of, face painting, youngins going and worshiping or sacrificing animals in the woods and worshiping a red devil.
Right.
True Satanism is something that everybody makes contact with every day. And what's true Satanism is, it's an ideology. It's not a religion in the same sense as Christianity. And they're actually going to be releasing videos from the seminar soon. So when that happens, I'll probably put it on my blog and do a little write-up for it. But just drop a little bit of the wisdom down, because I'm sure people are wondering what that is true Satanism is essentially selfishness. That you're willing to do for you and yourself, or people that you deem in your inner circle, certain things, and those things are not what you'll do for everybody else. Okay? Or you'll feel justified in harming or doing something against somebody's free will to service your own needs. And that's essentially all the primary tenets of Satanism is forsaking the rest of humanity to service your own desires. And that simple idea is fleshed out everywhere in society. And I hazard to guess that everybody who's listening to this show has at one time chosen to do something for themselves that went against or harmed somebody else in their life. You know? And it can be a sobering realization, but I actually think it's one of the most empowering realizations.
Very.
You know,
I am soaking that in. Satanic ideologies based on selfishness for the individual and selfishness for the elite. Wow.
Right. And it's basically this idea that, that your love for yourself, or the love that you have, is only for either you or certain people, and everybody else be damned. And,
right.
Yeah, so.
We love everyone. Everyone is your brother. Right.
Yeah. So I would say a really good example of this is, is when you would, let's see, I'm trying to think of one that's a little more concrete than the one I was just thinking of.
Sure.
Okay, so let's say you're driving down the road and you see your friend who's in front of you, and it's your friend in front of you. So you let them cut in front of you, you let them pass you, maybe you give them the right of way to get off of an exit that they're taking,
right,
because they're your friend. But now somebody else that you don't know, they pull in front of you, and you hit the roof, and you're like, God, look at this jerk, he's pulling in front of me. Who does this guy think he is? He owns the whole road. So you've got I'll act one way for certain people and another way for other people. Okay? And the reason you usually do that is because you feel social ties, or you get emotional support from the people that are in your inner circle. And it's kind of in a codependent relationship. So what ends up happening is there'll be choices that you can make in your life that will compromise your ideals. So we say that we don't want, especially people who are waking, we want to have love for people and love them unconditionally. We don't want to harm anybody, just general things you hear people say. But when you actually are put in a position where you have to make a choice to potentially do that, then this is where what Mark calls mini-me Satanism takes over, where you start to act out a satanic ideal and you don't even really know that you're doing it.
Right.
So yeah, that's what the presentation was about. It's it can be scary if you've never heard of Satanism before.
Right.
But I'm really eager to have Mark's presentation done, because I think it's going to put a lot of people at ease. And when you finally see the information, you're going to be like, oh, well, it's not as complicated as I thought, and it actually gives me an empowering perspective to become more sovereign and truly loving in my own relationship.
Absolutely. Out of curiosity, Justin, how do you feel, if you're aware of it or not, but about the recreation of the giant 3D printer that they're going to resurrect the temple of Baal in New York?
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
Well, they're not going to do it anymore. They canceled their plans, and now I believe the last time I checked, which was about a week or so ago, they were doing the Arc de Triomphe, the Arch of Triumph from Paris, so a replica of that.
Okay.
I actually wrote a whole article about the resurrection of the Temple of Baal. And a lot of the same ideas are from Mark's presentation are in that article. So if you just do a search for Temple of Baal, Sitz Show, or Stillness in the Storm on Google or any of your search engine pages, you can find it. And it describes the original positive meaning of Lucifer and the Baal and all these so-called negative entities. And then obviously there are more negative descriptions as well.
Moloch. Right, yeah. And for listeners, stillnessinthestorm.com, sitshow.blogspot.com. Again, this is Justin Deschamps, and it is on Facebook as well. We're going to go to the next question.
All
right. What has been your journey to finding your own voice as a journalist, and can you give any suggestions to people who have creative aspirations of their own? Where and how do you start? What's the first step?
Yeah, this is another great question. I would say just in general that everybody should spend, I'm going to use that no word, should. Yes, you should spend every day or as much time as you can devote to improving yourself. Whatever your passion is, if you like to cook, focus more energy into that. If you like to draw, do more of that. Whatever it is your passion is, even if you're not sure what your passion is, start doing something.
Explore.
Exactly, explore. Because the world we live in it's very institutionalized. I was actually having a conversation with my mother about this. Where we're raised in educational institutions until we're 18 or, early 20s if we go to college. And immediately after that, we usually enter the workplace, which is another institution. And all of these institutions, what they do is they make you become dependent on them.
Yeah.
So most people, by the time they're already 5, 6, 7 years into whatever career they are, they don't have a lot of productive hobbies or things that they do for their own self, for their own passion.
Right.
And they turn to escapist pastimes. So, I used to do this before I was waking up. I'd work an 8-hour day, and I'd come home and I'd watch TV shows or movies, or maybe if I was lucky, I'd read a book or something like that. Or I'd play some video games, and then I'd rinse and repeat, and I'd do the same thing again.
Right.
So your time is incredibly valuable, and even if you can only spend 10 minutes to explore what your passions are and to make that first step, then do that.
Right. It's like the irony of the TV show The Walking Dead. Well, we are seeing The Walking Dead, not just on a TV show. That's what we're experiencing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's another one of my favorite pastimes, is watching shows and movies and decoding them for their symbolic content. So the first thing I would do to answer this question is you just make the first step. Start doing something. Whatever that is, start it and and know that it is the first step. I forget who said this, but the only wrong step to make is the one that you don't take.
Absolutely.
And then the thing I would follow up with that is that whatever your goal or passion is, realize that in and of itself is a first step. So for example, I am not a writer. I've written all my life, but I'm not somebody who's a professional writer. I only started to do this several years ago because I knew it was important for sharing the information. So when I started the blog, I just started to put my ideas out there. And if anybody who's been following the work since I started it wasn't too coherent at first.
Sure, right.
But through the process of starting and making those steps, you learn skills, and then more things that you didn't think about when you first started start to come into your awareness.
Right. Those doors open up.
Exactly.
When you are on that path of being true to yourself, at least for me, this is what I'm finding, more doors open on the correct path.
Right. So you may decide that, you want to be a macrobiotic chef. And then you go to start it, and 2 weeks later, you're like, you know what? I do not want to be a macrobiotic chef anymore. But in the process, you met 2 or 3 other people that were really into, I don't know, fermenting foods. And you're like, you know what? Now I want to ferment foods. That's my passion. And then you do that for 2 weeks. You're like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do something else. You know, all of that is part of the process of finding what in the Vedic tradition is called your dharma. So that's your life purpose, what you came here specifically for, to live out in this incarnation.
Oh, and, I love that.
Yeah, and I kind of talk about this a lot in the Gaia portals, but just to briefly touch on this, because I think it goes along with this question, is
Please.
Your dharma and your karma, and I haven't studied Vedic tradition to know this through those traditions, but I'm gleaning the concepts through my own understanding, is if your dharma is your life path, so you came here to do something very specific, then your karma is the thing that happens to you that's constantly trying to guide you back towards that life path. Okay, so if your life path was to let's say, become we'll use the same example before, become a macrobiotic chef.
Okay.
All right. Well, if your initial career is in corporate America and you're working at a call center and life is just really nasty, just, you know, every day is a struggle. The people around you, they're just not friendly. You're constantly having issues in your workplace. You're just feeling not happy. Then I would say that this environment is kind of karmically telling you that you need to look for something else in your life. And when you've stepped closer to what your life path is, you'll get little signals and synchronicities that tell you this.
Oh, yes.
You see what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Okay, cool.
And I love that. Yes. And I do want to say, because I don't want folks to think that, you know, I think the structure of society, you know, there's something wrong with you because you can't stick to one thing. Well, heck with that. If you want to do something for a week or a day, or, you know, that's okay. And change it up. That's life experience. But you know how the structure, you know, they like to classify everybody and say, no, you know, something's wrong with so and so because they can't hold a job, or they can't, you know, you can't, just like you said, you can't stay in a class. You know how, do you know what I'm talking about? So it's okay. I think the life experience, you find that. You have to explore that. Yes.
Be open to the new things that you do. I mean, that's just to run through the answer, because I know I gave some specific answers to his question. You know, I said start. Whatever your process is, start it. To use my own experience, when Julie and I originally began doing things, we were doing radio. And then we eventually transitioned into a written blog, and now I do more written than I do any radio. And that's one example of the fact that once you start doing something, you may change, and you got to be open to that flow process.
Let it flow, and so you grow.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And then to answer the question more specifically, as far as like journalism, and this could go for whether you want to create a blog or you want to create a radio show or YouTube videos or, you know, even a Facebook page. It's a double process. So it's first internal, and then it becomes external. So you have to work on the foundation of your house first. All right. That's you. So one of the things I always say is you can't give somebody something that you don't have to give. Right? So if you want to be a blogger, you want to be a journalist, develop those skills. Do you know how to write? Do you know how to research? Do you know how to vet out information and you know, analyze data so that you can come up with a probable conclusion to say that, yes, this may be true and here's the reasons why, that kind of thing.
Right.
Okay, so work on your internal house, improve your writing skills, practice. If you want to do videography blogs and you're just not sure of, you know, if you're comfortable doing it, we'll do a few practice sessions, give it a shot, see how you feel.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then when you're finally ready to start, you feel like you've really done the work you need and you've kind of grown into, come out of your cocoon, as it were. Then now you can start to do the outward work. And this is, where social media is essential.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have the best radio show and blog in the world, but if nobody knows about it, it's not going to impact anybody.
Right.
So Stillness in the Storm has, oh my God, there's Google Plus, there's email, there's RSS feed, there's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, what's the other one? There's some that
there's more?
Yeah, there's a couple that I have automatically set up that Julian set up and I haven't gone into them. But anyway, the point is that there's all these different platforms out there. I mean, there's so many of them. And all of them can be used in a way to access or promote whatever work you're doing. So if you don't have to have an awakening blog, but if you want to, let's say you cook food and you want to have that kind of thing, then you could promote it that way.
Right.
And that's the general answer for that.
And I love that. Thank you. Do some more. Keep doing. Absolutely. All right. I just looked at the clock and I'm like, holy cow, we're just about at the top of the hour already. Justin, would you like a break or would you like to keep on trucking on?
I'm good. We can keep on going if you're good with it.
Okay. Yep, I'm fine with that. So again, folks, we are talking to Justin Deschamps, HaggieShackRadio.com, WolfSpiritRadio.com. This is Yvonne Palermo, a.k.a. The Groovy Bean. So happy you are here to join us tonight. And again, thank you again, Justin, for doing this part 2. And we are going to dive right into the next question. Justin and Yvonne, I believe this is a 2-part to both of us, I think, but if not, that's okay. What is your best advice about getting detached, disconnected from the matrix so as to live to our greatest potential? This person has disconnected by so many points in their life, but still have the certain matrix things like the full-time desk job that pays the bills, etc. But it really makes it hard to live my fullest, greatest potential, at least as big as I want to be, especially related to time. Perhaps it's just a frustration on my part that it's not moving as fast as I'd like, and I'm still in 3-dimensional material world as it's been defined so far. So, yeah, that's a big question. That is a fantastic question. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let me say that, well, let's attack this from the bigger picture perspective first.
Mm-hmm.
The answer to this question in general is develop self-knowledge and follow the truth wherever it leads. That will always lead you to what your dharma is, or your life purpose. And when you find your life purpose, everything you do will completely change. By that I mean, if you're working at a job that you think is just horrible, if your life purpose is to be at that job, and when you finally find your life purpose, the outward things you do, you still may, from an outside perspective, everything you do will still look the same, but internally, because your mind has changed and your perspective has changed, it'll be completely different for you. You know, I had this experience when I worked at the call center. When I originally started working at the call center in 2011, I didn't really want to work there. This was like 6 months after I'd been waking up. And I kind of came from this like, screw the world, I'm just going to live on the land somewhere. Well, that didn't work out too well. So I had to go and get a job. And at first I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to find my way to make this happen. And I was reading The Law of One at the time. And I said, you know what? Well, I'm gonna start to envision that wherever I am, it's where I need to be for my own personal growth. I'm gonna try to hold that perspective. And as soon as I did that, I started having these experiences where, people wanted to talk about things, and I found like I had more purpose in my moments of my life than I had before. So I would say the biggest problem with the matrix is that we've been taught to think that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing on our life path.
Yes.
Okay. And in a way, in certain contexts, that may be true. Okay. So on the one hand, if your life purpose is to be a teacher to the people about, the horrible things about vaccines, let's say, to give a specific example, you need to keep working towards that life path. On the other hand, whatever your step you're in at the moment is always guiding you towards that life path. The key is to just see that for what it is.
Right.
Okay? Right. And one of the ways to do that is to just simply follow the truth wherever it leads you in your personal life.
I love that.
Okay, so now let's get specific. So when we talk about the matrix, we're usually talking about, like working a full-time job, having to deal with, paying taxes, dependent on, the grocery store because you can't grow your own food, all these things like this.
Medical bills.
Health, oh yeah, medical bills. Yeah, the list goes on and on.
Right.
So the answer to that is you got to start being autonomous, which means you're relying more on yourself than you're relying on the system, especially. Okay, so for health, getting healthy is one of the best things you can do.
Oh, absolutely.
So first of all, when you get healthy, you're not feeding the medical industry anymore. Okay, so that's a huge one. The whole matrix is fueled by our energy, literally.
Yes.
Okay. So when you start to take these steps to become more self-reliant, you, at a very real level, start to pull yourself out of the system, and it's like you're pulling the carpet out from under the whole thing. Okay? So that helps you, and it helps everybody else.
Yes.
And then when you get healthy, now you can think more clearly. You're not as distracted by so much, Right. One of the things that I did is I cut out sugar and coffee, believe it or not.
Ooh.
Yeah, that one.
I just heard everybody go, ooh.
I'm sure. Yeah, and let me say, I'm not demonizing coffee. I'm not saying that it's horrible, but the point I'm making is that there's things that we do in our life that we rely on to give us pep, to give us energy and motivation, and that's fine. That's okay. That's part of the process.
Right.
But what we also should be working on is developing things inside of us that we don't have to rely on that. So one of the things I realized with coffee is that I was drinking like 2 and 3 cups of coffee a day because I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like unmotivated. I wouldn't want to do anything, and I had to wake up so I could face the day. So what I started to do was do more meditation in the morning, more like stretching and physical exercise and yoga.
Right.
And this actually gave me the same inspiring life essence energy that I was getting out of the coffee. I was now starting to get out of that.
The irony, it's kind of funny. We have to wake up to wake up.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? We have to wake up in the matrix because we're in the matrix.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So just that simple step.
Right.
And the whole energy drink thing. I used to see this all the time in the call center. You wake up in the morning, you have really sugary food and coffee right away. So immediately your body has to kick into defensive mode because it's flooded with sugar. So it releases insulin to pull all that sugar out and deposit it as fat. So about 2 hours later, you have this big sugar dip and your energy level goes to the pits. So then you reach for coffee or energy drinks again, which gives you another pep, but then you have to release more insulin, which then lowers your energy level. Right. And then by the time lunchtime comes around, you get the post-lunch hangover where it's like you can barely stay awake. You're falling asleep at your desk.
Yeah.
Do
you ever see that movie? I don't know, it was a while back ago, WALL-E, where the people are in these automatic chairs that shuffle them around, and they've got their big sodas, their chips, and the TV's attached to them, and they're just so detached from being human to, right? Yeah.
Okay. Totally.
Right.
So the point I'm getting at there is improve yourself. Find a way to heal yourself. Find a way to observe the fact that you have impulses and addictive tendencies. Addiction isn't just about consuming a substance. Addiction, and I have, for those who didn't listen to the first radio show, I spent 3 years as a cocaine and heroin addict. Intravenously injecting drugs into my body with needles. So I was probably, when people think addiction, the worst addiction scenario you can think of, I was living that for years. So I have a very palpable experience. And one of the things that finally allowed me to transcend all that is because I realized that the reason I was turning to those things in the first place is because there was a need inside of myself that wasn't being satisfied.
100%.
Yeah. So when you finally make that, you observe that that's what's happening. Now, and this is the tough part, now you have to start making a new choice that overpowers the old one. What did Buckminster Fuller said? There's no way to overthrow an old system, you can't infiltrate an old system, you have to make a newer and better one that eventually replaces it.
Mm.
And it's the same thing. Any habit or behavior that you're trying to overcome, you can't do it by telling yourself you don't want to do it, because the mind doesn't hear no. You know, if you're like, well, I'm going to stop biting my fingernails, all the mind hears is, I'm going to bite my fingernails.
It's like, it's like the old Charlie Brown, the mom at the side of the stage. Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. Yeah.
So that, about that, deal with your own, get your own house in order, improve yourself. And then once you improve yourself, by improve yourself, it's not just about dealing with the things that are holding you back, like your addictive tendencies, but it's also in developing life skills, you know. This is what I was getting into with indoctrination, is that we spend all these years in these institutions that indoctrinate us to be dependent, so that now instead of doing an artistic pastime, which increases our level of skill inherently, we turn to the TV where we just veg out and we're not really gaining any skill at all.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
Do something that imparts skill to yourself. Learn how to improve your math skills. Learn a new language, learn how to write something. Do something that improves your skills. Yeah,
the system has, so perfectly structured a system to numb people up.
Yes.
I'll share a bit about myself too. I was a farm slave addict for 10 plus years. So, you name it, Vicodin, benzodiazepines, down the line, the whole gamut. Boop, okay.
Oh yeah.
So yes. So, and the system has perfected numbing people up, and I get frustrated when people judge other people for intaking drugs, yet they'll sit in front of the TV for 15 hours. Well, that's a drug too.
Oh yeah, totally.
You're numbing, you are mind controlled and you're numbing it up. So but there's all kinds of different addictions. So,
Yeah, certainly. I mean, and addressing those, actually, there's a video, it's a little sciencey and heavy in information, but this is the thing that when I saw it, I mean, my head just exploded, because I felt like all these realizations I had when I was going through my addiction experience were now scientifically verified. The video is Science and Consciousness by Dan Winter. It's the first part in a 4-part series.
Okay.
Dan Winter, Science and Consciousness.
Okay, right.
And he has this machine, it's called the Heart Tuner, where it can measure the brain waves and the heart waves. And the way that these waves interact with each other, if they create harmony or dissonance, it can literally tell you like what your current state of consciousness is. If you're inspired and loving life, if you're depressed and unhappy, that kind of thing.
Wow.
And one of the cool things that he measured is that when just before people are about to get whatever their fix is for their addiction, so whether it's a cigarette, a coffee, your favorite chocolate,
right,
potato, whatever it happens to be, just before you're about to get your fix, your brain and your heart waves go into extreme dissonance. So it's like you get really out of sync. But then when you get your addiction, it's the total opposite. Now your heart and your brain waves like line up completely, and you have this like moment of temporary like bliss. Okay, and what that's basically teaching, what Dan says, and I wholeheartedly agree with, is that your biology is literally designed to have you reach for things that your soul is trying to get you to awaken.
Wow.
So in a way, we judge ourselves for having addictive tendencies, like, these are so bad, I'm such a horrible person. But in a way, the fact that you have an addictive tendency is actually a blessing. Because what it's saying is at a biological level, which also relates directly to your spiritual attainments, that there's something that's missing in your life, and you're unconsciously turning to something to get something out of that.
Absolutely.
So, and then the last part about the matrix that I really want to focus on is, once you've developed these skills, start taking risks and diversify how you make money. And what I mean by that is at the Free Your Mind conference, there was this new word I'd never heard of before, but I think is so awesome. It's called agorism. And don't ask me to spell it. I don't know. But agorism, or when you're an agorist, what you do is basically it's this philosophy that you're either in every moment and every choice that you make, you're either feeding into the system of control or you're becoming more sovereign and independent. Okay, so for example, if I'll use myself as an example. I love kale chips. Has anybody ever had these things before?
Yeah.
Okay, I think they're so tasty. You know, they're
I
like fried
love
kale, and if anybody's never had them, it's kale, and they put like some seasoning, and they dry it, and it's like this really crispy, tasty thing.
Right.
Well, they're really expensive. You know, for like a little bag of kale chips, you could spend $5. So
easy. Oh my gosh. Easy.
Yeah, so expensive. So I'm like, you know what? These things aren't that hard. I bet you I can make this. So I did some Google searching and I figured out a recipe. And for the same cost of a little tiny bag of kale chips, I can make like 10 times the amount of kale chips.
Yep. Yep.
You know, and I don't have to worry about what's in it because I'm the one who made it.
Absolutely.
So that's a tiny example. That's called an agorist move. Basically, any time that you do something that reinforces your own independence. So another great example of this is for homeschooling, right? Homeschooling is something a lot of people want to do, but hey, let's face it, you know, the world is a tough place when you want to homeschool your kids.
Right.
Well, if you can find other parents in your local area, then you can develop a homeschool network where you all help each other homeschool each other's children.
Yes.
And you may have to come under some kind of religious sanctioning because the state doesn't want you to do this. But it can be done. You know, before we had state-run education, this is how kids learned.
Yep.
Everybody in the neighborhood brought their kids together, and while mom and dad were working the farm or doing something, the kids were learning something from the stable master, from the blacksmith, from the, wherever they could learn from.
They were allowed to talk to people.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Crazy idea.
Right.
So yeah, develop your own skills. And once you finally have your passion, start it. My sister is, I'll use her as an example. She loves, making her own cosmetic products.
Oh, cool.
And she makes like these beautiful, oh my God, it's so amazing, like these, body scrubs and hand scrubs and natural hand lotion and literally out of stuff out of like honey and coconut oil, essential oils and she's been working on it for years, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I think it's been a year. And she just recently said, you know what, I'm going to try to make a business out of this.
Fantastic.
And now she's starting. The final thing I'll say about this is that every successful venture always had a litany, almost an endless amount of failed quote unquote steps. Where you're trying to do something and it didn't work out and you're like, oh man, I got to go back to the drawing board and, rediscover this or do this or, music is a perfect example. You try to learn a piece of music, odds are when you first start to learn something, you're not going to play it right. You're going to have to work really hard to learn something.
Wait a minute. You mean you don't have that instant gratification that everybody else is basing things on? You have to take the time. Okay.
Exactly. So when you do your musical instrument, which this is analogy applies to anything, all the mistakes that you make when you set out the goal to achieve your goal, like, okay, I'm going to learn how to play, Paco Bell Canon today. And you go to play it and you're like, man, I really screwed this part up, or, I didn't have this section. I couldn't do this part right. And we judge ourselves like, oh, I'm such a horrible player for not doing this perfectly.
No.
Well, let's flip that coin and say, actually, the fact that you have this mistake is an amazing blessing. It's literally a gift from the universe. Because the universe is telling you right there in a very real, palpable example, guess what? Now you have something you can focus your attention on to improve and get better at. And if you don't know how to play finger style with this particular piece, well, now you can focus time and energy. And at the end of this process, you will know that, and nobody can take that away from you afterwards.
Yes.
So.
Yes. And, going back to when you were talking about the foundation, when people throw bricks at you, just add it to the foundation. Because it just gives you more to stand on. And don't take anybody's personal judgments on what you're doing either. To just add it to the foundation. And who was it, Edison, that said, when he said it took him so many tries, and he goes, it wasn't that many tries that I learned how it didn't work, right? What didn't work to the plan, instead of focusing on the negative of it, right? I think it was Edison. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I think there's a quote like that. There's
something
a bunch
like that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. And next question. You ready, Spaghetti?
All right.
All right. I am considering starting a blog about high vibration foods and sustainable year-round organic vegetable gardening. I wondered if you have any advice for a first-time blogger and article writer.
Okay. Well, this is a good follow-up question to the previous one, so I can go into a little more detail. Well, again, it's an internal and external process. So internally, you always want to try to produce the highest quality content you can. So if, as far as the skills to producing a blog, you want to, learn whatever you need to learn to do that. You know, so there's a lot, believe me.
Yeah.
There's many different initial platforms you can use. So, like I use Blogger right now, which is a free service through Google. There's WordPress. There's Weebly, Wix, Tumblr. I mean, there's dozens.
Right.
So you have to choose a platform, and once you choose a platform, you have to educate yourself on how that works. And, so constantly be learning about stuff like that. And then there's the skills that you're trying to enhance that allow you to even do blogging. So if you've never written before, start learning reading some articles on how to write. There's a great online university called Udemy.
Oh.
And, they have a bunch of free courses. Julie and I actually took some on social marketing, last year, which was really helpful.
Were they? They are helpful? They were helpful?
Oh yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, they're not always perfect, but you take what you can and, you know, you move on to the next. So always be enhancing yourself. So it's kind of like you're trying to make whatever you're making as best as you possibly can. And always be willing to go back and say, well, you know, this didn't work, so I'm going to try better with this thing the next time. And then there's two basically kinds of blogs out there. There's scraper blogs, which are, they gather content from other, blogs, and then they share that content on, a website. So, Ascension Mother Earth.
Okay.
If anybody's heard of that website, that's a good example of a scraper blog.
Okay.
An original content blog, they write all of their own original content. So it takes more work and energy to have an original content blog, but the good news with that is that you can be more in depth and more personal. And it allows you to have more long-term traffic. The downside is that it takes more time and energy to produce one item.
I see.
Scraper blogs, you could, depending on how quick you are when you get your blogging skills together. I mean, there was a guy I used to follow, Lucas, 2012, from way back in the day. Well, not way back, but, you know, a few years ago.
Right.
I mean, geez, that guy used to crank out hundreds of posts a day. I don't know how he did it, but yeah. So those are the two different kind of websites. Stillness in the Storm is like a combination of the two. I like to share stuff that I'm researching, but then when have researched enough and I'm like, okay, I want to talk about something, I'll write a blog post about that, or I'll just write an introduction for a blog post. So that's some different styles that you can use. And then once you have your blog style together, then you want to focus on social media. Like I was mentioning earlier, social media is really important.
Right.
It's the way that you get all your traffic to you. And really, I would actually encourage anybody who's got passion and wants to share your wisdom with the world, make a blog, make a YouTube channel.
Right.
Just start sharing
do something.
Yeah, to be a doer, like you. I think you put that in one of your answers.
Yes.
Is that
doer? Let's
just
make them T-shirts. Be a doer.
Yeah. T-shirts actually. Dan Winter is another person I refer to when I talk about what happens to your consciousness when you share something. So when he hooked people up to the heart tuner, and he was measuring their brain and their heart wave coherence, when people would think about something that they're secretive of, that they're like, well, I can't tell people this because they'll judge me or whatnot. They literally create this consciousness of disempowerment, disconnection, separation, anxiety. I mean, all of the things that we associate to negative states.
Right.
Okay. But on the flip side, when you take that thing that you've labeled in your own mind as something you can't share with somebody and you make it shareable, it literally transforms you. I've had this experience in my life. So in the process of taking an idea or a truth that you have and sharing it with the world,
right,
it enhances your own understanding of it.
Absolutely.
And then if you can, and then especially with something that you are maybe apprehensive to share, or you're not sure if you should, or you feel like it needs to be kept secret because people will reject you and all that. If you can find a way to make that shareable, not only will it feel incredibly liberating, but it helps you build a space of vulnerability with other people.
Absolutely.
That's one of the reasons I like to tell people. I was really scared at first to tell people about my addiction experience. Because it's pretty like, oh my God, you used to be an addict. Geez, we're not supposed to like people like you.
Right.
Right. And, but now I love telling people of it because what I noticed when I started was that, people would be anxious. They weren't really sure, especially when you're meeting new people. You're like, well, I don't know what to think about this person. So when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, people are like, oh, wow, well, if he can tell me something like that, right, I can be more comfortable with him. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. And opens up, we all can relate more than we know. Absolutely.
Yep. So yeah, and then the last thing I was going to say is, as far as blogging is constantly learn and be willing to revise and edit your process. Stillness in the Storm has evolved so much over the past 3 years, and I'm constantly looking for ways to improve it and make it better and look for feedback and, network with other bloggers and things like this. So,
sure.
You're not alone, and there's all sorts of amazing people out there to help, and I've actually would love to continue to pioneer a blogger support network. It's kind of, when you get into the blogging world, everybody's kind of their own island of, media, a lot of times anyway, and we kind of compete with each other about whatever things we're promoting. And it seems a little silly that we should, we could do that when we could be working together. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All helps. So yeah.
Right. I agree with you. Thank you for that share.
And I'll just say as a last thing on this, if anybody ever wants to reach out to me and get some more specific information about the blogging, YouTubing, anything venture you're doing, feel free to contact me. I would be more than happy to share what wisdom I have.
Oh, thank you for that. That's a gift. Thank you. Love that. And folks, again, we are talking to Justin Deschamps from stillnessinthestorm.com. So, and Justin, do you want to give your email out?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
You can reach me through the SITS email, which is sitsshow@gmail.com. That's really the best way to get a hold of me, although, you can certainly try me on Facebook. Right now, my time is so crazy limited that if I don't get back to you right away, it's not that I'm ignoring you. It's just that I'm really busy. And even if it takes me a month to get back to you or 2 months, I will get back to you eventually.
Or you could send Justin some really lovely kale chips. I love kale chips, by the way.
Right.
It's funny you said that because I made some for the first time a couple months ago. Note to self, make sure you spread out the kale.
Yes.
I had like a Sigmund the Sea Monster of a kale chip going on in my oven. But it was still tasty.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Right on. All right. So that concludes the questions from the Facebook group. We did have some live chat questions from when we did part 1.
Okay.
Do you want to pick out which ones or which one you would like to go into next?
As long as we have time, we can go right through them.
Okay. So this was from, in the live chat, Groovy Poet. And let's see, or am I skipping that first one? Let me see.
I think there may be one before that.
There's one before that. Do you want to answer that one or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. It says here, I understand that the U.S. created ISIS. Your website says it was Saudi. What's the truth? Do you know? Will there be equal women's representation?
Okay. I think that's the second one you just asked is a separate question.
Okay.
I think anyway. I'm not sure, but we'll just assume it is for.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So this is a good question because, if you're floating around in the alternative media, you probably hear this a lot, like ISIS is created by the U.S. and all this. And it's not a simple black and white answer, especially when it comes to false flags. So what a false flag is it's an event that a government or a group uses to blame or divert attention from the original event that happens onto another focus or source. That's all a false flag is. And what that means is that the people or the event itself could be real. Okay? So let's say you're living with some roommates and one of your roommates breaks a glass and then they blame you for breaking the glass. Okay? Well, it's kind of, that would be a very simple analogy for a false flag. The glass actually broke. That really happened. Okay?
Right.
The part that is false is that it was blamed on you and not on the person who originally broke it. And that person who blamed it on you might have been doing so because they're trying to get you kicked out of the house, and they want to use that story of you being blamed for the glass breaking to then rile up all your other roommates to then get you kicked out. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we talk about the creation of ISIS, it's not a one-to-one black and white, oh, well, everybody in ISIS is actually a CIA agent, they actually have houses in the United States, and there are no real Islamic terrorists, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not how it worked. Specifically with ISIS, what happened is the U.S. will destabilize a region, and then through the destabilization effort, they will materially support another faction. Okay, so they do this in most countries. For example, the rebels that they supported in Syria or Libya rather, to overthrow Gaddafi ended up being linked later to the Islamic State. Mm-hmm. So it's not that they literally sent in fake Islamic terrorists to Libya to then masquerade around as if they were real Islamic terrorists. They were really people that were living in the region, and they had been deceived into some kind of radical Islamic position. Where it becomes false is that it was all garnered and fostered and supported by the U.S. So a lot of the military arms and the intelligence that they get through Assad, which is the Israeli intelligence service, is also supported by the NSA and the CIA. Okay? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, the point I'm getting at is that it's not a black and white simple answer.
No, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the idea that the U.S. created ISIS, what that is referring to is that the United States knew that if they destabilized the Middle East, that they would create radical Islamist groups. And they wanted this to happen so that they could use these groups, position them and nurture them through certain leaders that they knew were in control, such as the Saudis, to then position these radicals into other nations that then would destabilize the region and end up doing things that fostered the American or the U.S. agenda.
Got it.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like a chess game, does that make any sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
No, I'm soaking that in because I got that. I get it.
Right. So let me just finally leave this question with the question itself is kind of a loaded question.
Yes.
Because what it's saying is, well, did the U.S. create ISIS or did the Saudis? Well, it's not one or the other. The answer isn't yes, the U.S. created ISIS or yes, the Saudis created ISIS. The answer is more complex and in depth and detailed than that.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to open your minds to the greater drama or story behind everything. And then when you fully absorbed all that data, now you'll have a little bit more deep understanding about what it is. What we do know for sure is that the U.S. and how they use the whole ISIS concept is to foment this war on terror ideology in the United States. So any time anything remotely has to do with something they can blame on radical Islamic terrorism, the whole ISIS group holds up a flag like, yep, we did that.
Right.
And now the media promotes that to the American public as saying, look, guys, this is why we're going to war. This is why we have the Patriot Act and NDAA and all these things. So continue to believe in daddy government because we're protecting you. Okay. So these false flags they're not just one objective or goal. There's many different goals and many different agendas all wrapped up into the same kind of plan. And it's used in many different ways, specifically targeted for Americans or the Saudis or, people in the local region like Iraqis. So there's a lot to consider.
Absolutely. Right. And you answered that wonderfully. So thank you. All right. Next one up. This is from Groovy Poet. And I can tell you too, Justin, Groovy Poet, I know, is from Stillness in the Storm. So, yes. 9/11 is a wake-up call to all, if only they will take a look. I have tried and usually have trouble with a mental block for most. However, in what practical ways can Justin recommend for one to inform? It's an excellent way to be awake if one accepts, but can be a problem after one starts to see. Wow.
One starts to see as in see the truth, you think?
Right. I think so.
Oh, okay.
So once you're, definitely. Once you're awake, it can be a problem for you. I think how do you explain and inform to others that are still in your group? How do you wake them up? How would you inform them?
Well, I'm going to answer this in two different ways. First, as an individual in your true seeking, which kind of goes to what the first part of this question is, like you're trying to offer truth to somebody and you just blew their mind. Like let's say you actually finally get somebody to acknowledge the fact that 9/11 may not have been what the official story is.
Right.
Well, now you kind of leave that person with a bombshell in their life and they're like, well, Jesus, how do I even reconcile anything afterwards? And that is definitely something to honor and be responsible for. So what we're talking about is basically that when you're sharing the truth with somebody, the truth is by its very nature, as I forget who said this quote, but the truth is belligerent. And it doesn't care about what you believe, how invested you are in your beliefs. When you recognize the truth and it finally enters your mind, it will shatter all of your illusions. Wholesale.
Complete resignation.
Right.
Ooh, I love that.
And the pieces of what's left behind can be really traumatic for people. So as an individual in the truth seeking process, the further along the path of truth you walk, the easier it gets, and you eventually get to the point where you have so much principled truth absorbed into you that you're really not even being that blown away anymore. It's informative. It expands your knowledge, but you're not like, oh my God, my whole world is shattered.
Right.
I have to completely pick up the pieces,
Right.
So the more truth you absorb, and this is where the holistic truth process really is essential, you're eventually going to get to this critical mass where it's not traumatic anymore. It just enhances everything. Okay. And that takes time. And the bigger principles like, natural law, the book that I've mentioned several times, Children of the Law of One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis, is a holistic knowledge book.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't talked too much about this in the blog. I've written a few things that I'm going to release at some point. I just haven't had time to finish them. But holistic perspectives and knowledge integration is the key to transmuting any negative emotion in yourself into a positive one.
Love that. Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is when you're sharing, as an example, when you're sharing truth about 9/11, you're taking somebody's worldview and perspective. Okay, and you're like pulling the carpet out from under them. And now, if they don't possess a capacity to reinvent themselves and come up with a new backdrop of understanding, they're either going to fall back into the old one, so now they're going to reject what you've said, okay, or they're going to be like so traumatized that they just don't know what to do, and they're like kind of like deer in the headlights.
Absolutely, yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
So what I always try to do is, if I'm going to give somebody mind-blowing truth,
Mm-hmm.
I try to offer it at least some type of a backdrop of understanding
Mm-hmm.
how this can be used in your own personal process and to get holistic understanding.
Yeah.
So we could probably talk about that for a while. But,
right, I know. I'm like writing down all these shows we can do.
So,
okay.
But yeah, to get to a more specific answer about developing rapport, when you're going to share truth with somebody, just like I was talking about before, everybody's got certain doors they've allowed to be opened in their own mind and others that they've closed.
Yes.
And one thing I often like to remind people of is that the truth is patient. It doesn't force itself onto you. It definitely offers itself to you. You will be presented with the truth. But you always have the choice to reject it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it will wait. It will wait a lifetime. It will wait multiple lifetimes for you to finally decide to open yourself up to it.
Right. And just because if a door shuts, it doesn't mean it's locked.
Exactly.
Not
it can
at all.
always be reopened. So
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
One thing the good news about that is everybody has a door open somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of trying to look for that instant gratification of, well, I have to tell somebody about 9/11, and if I don't completely blow their mind about 9/11 within the first 5 minutes, I'm a total failure with my ability to share the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work like that. And you're going to set yourself up for not only feeling disempowered, but also making people feel like, they may be badgered. Like I remember when I first started trying to share the truth, this was my problem, is that cancer was a big thing. I discovered cures for cancer. I'm like, oh my God, I have to tell everybody and anybody I can about this.
Yeah.
And I felt like if I didn't convince you that there were cures for cancer within the first 5 minutes of me talking to you, I was a total failure.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, just like this person was probably wondering, why, what is the problem like? What am I doing wrong? Well, you have to develop rapport with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You have to develop a relationship with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to recognize and honor free will.
Mm-hmm.
So they've chosen at their own free will level to have certain doors closed and certain doors open.
Yes.
And if you try to open a door that's closed, you're gonna either be so forceful that you traumatize the person to where they finally open it because they're just feeling badgered.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're going to fight you so hard that they ain't going to want to talk to you anymore afterwards.
Right. You're going to get your toes stubbed by the door.
Trying to kick it in and like, man, my feet hurt.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to force that one issue, which is kind of like a really narrow, closed-minded perspective of like, well, I have to tell them about 9/11.
Right.
Think about another door. Maybe they're more open about,
something gentler.
Like election fraud. Like this is a perfect thing. There's so many people that are realizing that the system is fraudulent with the election. This is one of the reasons I'm covering it so much in my blog. It's a great, and one more red pill that we have on our tool belt to arm ourselves.
No kidding.
So go find a way that their mind is open about something and feed into that.
Yep.
And then know when you see their mind is about to get closed, you can just see it. Like it takes some observation. You got to kind of be willing to stop focusing on what you're trying to tell them and observe what they're actually willing to hear.
Yeah.
When you've observed that their mind's starting to close, well then step back and let them absorb that and process that.
And they're more, and they'll come. A lot of times I've seen people come back to you with questions later.
Yes.
And that's when you just reintroduce a little bit more information. That's all.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, we got to keep moving and grooving, my friend.
Okay, go
Here
ahead.
we go. Bias and or agenda becomes a human experience. How can, I believe it says, well, that's the wrong word. How can we keep the group from falling into such an ego while attempting to correlate full disclosure?
Bias and or agenda becomes a human experience. How can we keep the group from falling into such ego while attempting to correlate full disclosure? Okay. I'm not exactly sure what they're referring to.
Right.
But I'll just kind of answer the question in relation to ego and group dynamics.
Sure.
The whole adage of, one bad apple in a group spoils the whole bunch. It's kind of applicable here. So it's this idea that, when we start to slip into what I call negative ego, the group, because of the codependent nature of consciousness on Earth right now, we start to get codependent with that one person, and then before you know it, it's like that one person's negative ego outbursts are like completely controlling the whole group dynamic.
Yes.
So what I mean by negative ego is somebody who's basically being selfish, somebody who's trying to focus on themselves and forsaking the rest of either reality or somebody's perspective for their own. And this happens a lot because this is how we're trained from birth to think.
Yes. So,
I am not the perfect person when it comes to this. It's easy for everybody to fall into negative ego. So I would say for yourself, the best thing to start to do is to train yourself to recognize when this happens.
Yes.
And when you feel yourself emotionally reacting to something, especially in a group dynamic, so like you want to talk about, vaccines, let's say. You're like, you want to share some truth about vaccines, and then before you get the chance, the conversation starts to switch into, chemtrails.
Right.
Okay, so now you're like, well, damn, I really wanted to talk about my vaccine truth. What the heck, Well, first of all, just be willing to relax and that experience that you have where you say, man, I wish I could have done this.
Right.
That right there, you're experiencing your negative ego. Okay. The flow of the conversation is moving in a different place. And you're already starting to reject the truth of the experience and say, well, dang it, I wanted this.
Right.
And you're kind of like pouting. So recognize, start to develop the skills to observe that this is happening so that you can, in your own space, be willing to be more open to what's happening and develop, mental discipline so that you can hold on to ideas long term. So in a conversation, if you're somebody that's like, I have to tell my idea now because I'm going to forget it if I don't get it out, well, it's because you lack mental discipline. And if you focus more on mental discipline and do less multitasking,
correct.
Multitasking really hinders your ability to concentrate.
Correct.
Your ability to hold on to your ideas and then reintroduce them when the time is right will be that much better.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely.
And then the last thing I'll say is, and this kind of dovetails off of that, is if you see somebody in the group starting to really control the group dynamic, then you can walk away. It's okay. And if you feel invested, you don't also be afraid to just kindly and compassionately speak the truth of the situation. You say, listen, if it's like a meeting, you're supposed to have a meeting about one thing and all of a sudden this person is talking about the drama in their life. Say, listen, I need to interrupt you for a second. I don't want to, discount what's happening in your life, but we originally gathered to discuss XYZ. And I want to refocus our attention on that. Is that something that everybody can agree to do?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like also that you had a term for it, the way to say no in a coordinated effort, right?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But don't forget too, there are people that are possibly in the group that are there to stir up stuff, right?
Right. Yes. And okay, well, let me say something to that. So let's say you got somebody that is so uncontrollable in themselves that they literally just can't control themselves, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Or they are potentially a disinformation agent, you know.
He said it. There it is.
I said it.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay.
Okay. So, on one hand, anytime this happens in your experience, it's a learning opportunity.
Yep.
Okay, so instead of immediately saying, God, this person's such a jerk and they're totally ruining the situation and I have to immediately squash this, well, you know, I would say take a moment to absorb what's happening and learn from what's happening, because just the ability to observe these behaviors in other people without immediately wanting to squash them will then allow you to then recognize how either you do these things in the future or how other people do them more subtly in the future.
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah,
so receive the bounty of the experience. But then, once you've recognized that somebody may either be completely uncontrollable or may be a disinfo agent, practice either sequestration so that you're pulling yourself away from that situation, and then reforming the group dynamic without that person.
Absolutely. And you know what, Justin? There is also a button that I have had to use, and I will admit this. It's called block.
Yep.
Because for me, there's a point you reach, and when a certain line for me is crossed, that does not work for me. That's what I push. And
exactly.
That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, when I say remove yourself from the situation, it could when we talk about social media, blocking yourself from social people that you don't want to interact with social media is definitely an option. I mean, social media is a hotbed of triggers and reactions and impulses. I mean, it's huge.
You can see feeding frenzies happen. It's horrible.
Constantly, constantly seeing it. So use those tools to remove yourself from the situation. But at the same time, balance that with exposing yourself to situations that trigger you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's like you got to develop your emotional and an energetic immune system.
Yes.
You know, if you're always completely separating yourself with people that trigger you, then your ability to be calm and collected in the storms of the life that we're always in is going to be more difficult.
Right.
So, you know, push your boundaries, develop the skills, but also know when you've had enough for the day and you need to step back and heal yourself.
Right. And respect, because it's I draw the line with when it gets to a darker name calling kind of thing. That's when I have to do that to just distance myself. Okay, I'm going to combine two questions here because we're winding down.
All right.
And I'm going to, okay, so let me go to, where did that go? Oh, heaven's sakes, where did it go? Corey Goode's Secret Space program, Secret Space revelations are overwhelming. Specifically, how have you determined that his story is credible and not disinformation?
Well, I haven't. So this kind of goes to the original discussion we had on discernment from part one, which is that I have a scientific approach for discernment. What that basically means is that I don't have absolute certainty. In order to have absolute certainty, you need absolute knowledge. And because my knowledge is limited, that means I can't be absolutely certain about something.
Right.
Okay, so I don't know if anything is 100% true. I don't even know if I'm really talking to Yvonne right now.
I tell you what, this is not Yvonne. Right. Yeah.
So all you can have, it's very simple, and it kind of takes the pressure off. All you can be certain of is what you have personally vetted out in your own discernment process. And that's always expanding and growing because you're always gaining new information.
Right.
So you got to be willing to change your conclusions about things.
Absolutely.
So that being said, in relation to Corey Goode's information, if I was to hold a meter, on the left-hand side, everything is it's more likely to not be true, and on the right-hand side, it's more likely to be true. I would position Corey's data on the right-hand side. It's more likely to be true. And the reason why is, out of all the things he speaks about a ton of different things, okay? And every item he speaks about, I personally vet in my own discernment process. So out of all the things he speaks of, in my own knowledge and understanding, there's nothing that says, well, that's not true. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is that I have a high degree of certainty that he's probably telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But I'm always open to, well, maybe he's not right about something.
Right.
Okay? And this is an individual person's process. So if you don't know anything about how anti-gravity technology works, if you have no idea about how time travel works, if you have no idea about psychology and monarch mind control programming and all of these things, when you hear, or the other secret space program whistleblowers, that's hidden government projects, the list goes on and on,
sure,
right?
It's huge. Yeah.
There's so much stuff. If you have absolutely no knowledge about that stuff whatsoever, your ability to discern whether or not his information is true the answer you get from your own internal intuition isn't going to be clear.
Right.
Because you don't have a lot of personal data to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why I would say that if you want to enhance your understanding about something, you have to do more research.
Yes.
If you don't know what MILAB is, military abduction program, do a whole bunch of research on military abduction programs.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And for example, there was a guy, the Ruiner, he was saying that all of Corrigan's information wasn't true and all this stuff. So for me, what I did is I read the Ruiner's blog and I digested all the information. I'm like, okay, well, let me listen to what he has to say.
Right.
Because I can't tell if something's true or not if I haven't read it yet. Right?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with this.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know if something is true or not for yourself, then you've got to do the research. You got to get invested and put as much time as you can in the realms of understanding that you do have. And then you can make a determination and then always be expanding your knowledge about things. If you don't know about one thing, search and research
it out.
If you can.
You bet. Absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm going to pause this just for a second to let my dogs out.
Okay.
Hold on. One. Okay, thank you for that little pause there. My dog had to get outside. Thank you for that question in response to discerning Corey Goode. Surely appreciate that. We are winding down here. Again, I have absolutely enjoyed my time with you, and I know that everybody tuning in is very thankful for you taking this time out to answer these questions for everyone.
My pleasure.
So,
I feel honored to do so.
Heck. Anytime. I think I would really love to do a show with you on ego and then some. Because
yeah, definitely.
I have to share with you the gift that you have so eloquently how you speak. It's wonderful. The way that you can put words together. It's just so eloquent. So it's inspiring to me. So thank you. All right. So the last question is here for Justin Deschamps from stillnessinthestorm.com. Stillness in the Storm Newsroom on Facebook. Justin, can you still be spontaneous in your leisure time? How do you balance that time?
Yeah. Oh, I'm actually very spontaneous. By spontaneous, I mean, if there's something that falls into my lap and I wasn't expecting it, it's pretty easy for me to just grab the ball and just run with it.
Mm-hmm.
As long as I've invoked the right consciousness, that is.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The thing that I wouldn't say I'm struggling with, but the thing that is challenging me now that I'm focusing a lot of energy into is not getting myself worked up because I'm not meeting my goals. I spend a lot of time trying to achieve various things throughout the day in relation to the blog and my own research and my own personal growth, and I just don't have time to do everything. There's just not enough hours in the day. And it's really easy for me to get worked up because I thought it was going to take an hour to write an article, and it ended up taking 3 hours, and now I didn't have time to do all these other things I should have done, and before I know it, it's I've literally been working for 12 hours and I have all this other stuff and I'm beating myself up because I didn't accomplish something.
Right.
What's
the wackiest last fun thing you did that was spontaneous?
That was spontaneous?
Yes.
Well, now what I'm doing is I'm when I go to do something, I think to myself, I invoke this consciousness like, well, Justin, you have all the time in the world to do this right now. So there's literally nothing else you need to focus on besides what you're doing at this moment right now. Mm-hmm. And oh my God, what a relief that is to do that. So like I had to take my mother to a doctor's appointment today. Mm-hmm. And I was out for half the day, and that's normally in the morning is when I do a lot of work. So I was tempted to be like, oh my God, I'm not going to have all the time I had today, and this is going to really throw me off. And I just said, you know what? It's okay. Even if I do nothing today, it'll all be perfect. So I'm exactly where I need to be right now.
Ah, wonderful.
And for me, that's kind of like embracing the spontaneity of the moment. And another answer I'll give is that I think of little melodies all the time.
Ooh.
And so, you know, when I'm in the right space, I'll just run and grab the guitar and I'll just start immediately playing the thing that popped in my head, so because I want to get it out there and express it and, you know, that kind of thing. So.
I love that. Getting to know you. Getting to know all about Justin. Right on. And your kitty cat's in the background going,
can you hear them?
Hey,
oh my God.
Screw the kale chips. Where's the catnip chips?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Oh my goodness. So wonderful. Oh, well, thank you, Justin, so much. Again, folks, Justin Deschamps, okay? I want you to check out his blog, stillnessinthestorm.com. Sitz Show, SITSSHOW.blogspot.com. Facebook is on Sitz Show as well, so it's facebook.com/Sitz Show, SITSSHOW. And Justin, I just thank you so much again for doing part 2 here. And I think Justin's digging being on the radio again. Whoop whoop. So maybe we'll see what else we can do. That'd be fun.
Definitely. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. And again, I'd like to thank Colleen tonight, HaggieShackRadio.com, WolfSpiritRadio.com for our special Saturday night show. Thank you for taking the time out as well and doing this because, you know, it's a volunteer system, folks. So remember, donate to the stations because we're here for you. You're here for us. We all work together and we stand as one. Unity in the community. Help each other out. Now, there are 2 wolves, and they are always fighting. One is darkness and despair. The other is light and hope. Which wolf wins? Remember, folks, whichever one you feed. Be safe, be kind, be courageous. This is the Groovy Bean, Yvonne Palermo, signing out. I'll see you next time, Friday night, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you again, Haggie Shack Radio and Wolf Spirit Radio. Good night, folks. Thank you.